Keith, welcome to Podcastina.
Hey, I'm finally glad I could do it.
We got it together. You're a busy man.
I mean, we're here. I'm happy. Yeah. we got the puppy.
And we got Monty.
Yeah.
Are you a dog person?
Kinda. I like hypoallergenic dogs. I took allergy medicine luckily today, so I'll be fine.
Oh, I'm glad you did that.
My middle name is Lamont and he's Monty.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like we're kindred.
You are?
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. Wait, that's a cool middle name.
Lamont, yeah.
Where'd your parents get that?
I'm named after my dad.
Oh,
so
okay.
I'm Keith Lamont Johnson Jr. Yeah.
You tight with your parents?
Yeah, we're cool. They're still together, so I could call them. We'll go on like a little 3-way call, talk some shit, make fun of each other, go about our day. So it's good. Yeah.
That's amazing. You know, I always quote your joke about cell phones.
Oh, yeah.
About the family plan. Because anytime that's the one thing that I've never not been on my family plan with my phone. So I'll always be like, oh, my friend Keith Johnson has this amazing joke.
Yeah, I'm staying on forever. I'm just going to just keep building on it, and it's going to be a generational thing. Haven't changed my number, so it's like I've been on it since probably 8th grade. You're not kicking me off, Dad.
No, never.
Never. It's too late. Yeah. It doesn't even make sense for me to have my own.
No, it doesn't.
I've never even thought of it being a bill in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not going to be. So.
Once you have a family, they'll just go, everybody, grandkids will be on the family plan.
Yeah, we'll have, it'll just be passed down. The numbers will get passed down. That's going to be the new generational wealth. It's like numbers.
Yeah.
This is your granddaddy's number.
Oh, you're right.
Passed down to you.
Like thinking of it now. I get so much anxiety when I think about if I get to a place with my career that I have to change my phone number. I feel so attached to my phone number.
How long have you had it?
Since 7th grade.
Same.
Yeah.
Okay. Same number. Yeah. I don't think I would change it. I think I would just get a new phone and then just keep that number on, like.
Just in case.
Yeah. Put it on like a Apple Watch or something.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah. But I'm keeping that number.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's sentimental.
Yeah, definitely. It's who I am. I think. Are you hesitant of who you give it out to now? Or you? I mean, well, obviously you kind of have to be, but like with other comics.
Not with other comics.
Okay.
My biggest thing that I hate about giving it out is dating. So I'm in the dating space, and I try to keep it online until I have to. But sometimes people are pushy about it, and you don't want to be weird and be like, no, I can't give you my number because I think I'm going to be super famous someday, and I'm afraid you're going to sell it to TMZ.
It has nothing to do with safety. It has to do with my future. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you could get a lot done on Instagram. Are you on profiles? Like went on like dating like apps and stuff.
I at the moment I'm only on Raya, which is so douchey.
Okay.
But
so you're living the dream.
I suppose.
Yeah.
At $30 a month.
See, I feel like Instagram gives you everything you need, and then you don't even need to call the person. You could just call them on Instagram if you want to.
I kind of wish that I would use, or that other people would use, I mean, I'm maybe shooting myself in the foot saying this, but I wish I could meet men through Instagram more than just an app. I don't think the app is necessarily helpful. And but when I've seen very appealing profiles on Raya, I'll just go DM the person on Instagram because I think they're so much more likely to see it there. And it's kind of paints a better portrait of who I am.
Yeah. You get to see, like, it's not curated of who you want to be as like a person of interest. It's just like, yo, this is who I am. Even though like I curate my Instagram page, so that, I mean, you're gonna get what I see or what I put up. But no, I feel that for sure.
You're in a relationship, right?
You know, I do my thing.
I do my thing is the best answer to that.
You know, I just be chilling. I like keeping everything private because I noticed this too. You ever see those people who are like, here's my boyfriend or here's my girlfriend, and then all of a sudden they just disappear off the face of the earth. I want to bring back like some mystique because I feel like I could tell when relationships are going good and bad on Instagram based on the posts that the men and the women are posting.
1000%.
And I'm like, I don't ever want to be that. And that's like my biggest fear. I was talking to my friends about that. They're all like, they grew up, both parents, like decent. And we were talking about like, all right, is being ready, like, is it a thing that hits you, or is it a choice that you constantly have to keep making? So like, you know, when you meet like certain couples who get married, they're like, I just knew. And I'm like, did you really just know, or did you have to like keep climbing over these insecurities as a human as they arose? You know what I mean? And
where are you on that spectrum?
I think my friend explained it well. He was like, I if I'm going to do it on, like, if I'm going to get married, it's going to be for the long haul. So that person's going to have to be tried and tested. I don't know if it's a just like, oh, I just knew. I think it's a constant like, oh, I didn't know I had this. I think it's good until it's not, and then you figure out why. And then it may be like, I'm an anxiously attached person, or, oh, I have trouble committing, or I just feel like you're giving me this and not this. And then you could like remove that barrier and then go for another, 10 miles. And then there will be another thing maybe on her side. And then it's like, okay, what is your thing? Okay, let's unpack that. So I don't think it's a yes, comma. I don't think it's I just knew. It's just, I think it's a yes. And then we work through this, and then we work through that, and then we work through that. That's where does that answer your question a little bit?
It does. I'm curious about, and obviously I'm sure it's different for everybody, and that's your take on it. I wonder because there's this, have you ever heard of the taxi cab theory? It's from Sex and the City.
No, tell me.
So basically men get compared to taxis in this analogy.
Okay.
And when they're ready to get married, they'll be dating with no intention to get married. And then their light comes on, and then the first person they pick up is the wife as soon as they're ready.
Yeah, you're not I think you lose when that light turns on. It's because you've lost a couple of good ones and you're like, fuck.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, you're like, oh, that was actually a good taxi cab client that I gave a ride for free. I should have turned my light on for that one. So I've taken a couple of L's where I'm like, oh, you're engaged now, you're married, or you're in a relationship. Is it real? And then I'll think it's not real, and then I'm like, oh no, it's real. And like, then you're just left to kind of reel on your own and be like, okay, like this is a thing now. Okay, maybe it's time to put the light on. But
that's where I wonder. I'm like, does that mean that for those men, they become ready and then they just kind of force, whether it's a square to circle fit, whoever they meet next, as soon as they're like, you know what, I need to get married today, I need to have kids tomorrow, whoever the next person is, are they just going to kind of force that to work, whether or not it's necessarily the best fit for them?
Right. There's it's crazy because there are like I have certain friends who are married, and then when I look at their wives or girlfriends, it's just an immediate like, oh, that's a wife. And then sometimes I'm like, oh, that's a girlfriend, or she won't be around long. But like my friends that are married, I know I'm like, oh, that's a wife.
Yeah.
And it's just a way that she carries herself. It's a way that like they interact as a couple. There are people who are married who I'm like, you could tell that she's the dominant one, and he has no leverage in the relationship, and he's just like along for the ride, and she's making the timeline, and she's like driving the pulse of the relationship. And I mean, I personally, that is what gives me like, I'm always like kind of pushed back by that. And that's not to say the person who I'm like, oh, that's a wife, she's like submissive or whatever. It's more like equally yoked, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like when I guess we'll name drop. When I see Rachel and her husband. I'm like, that's a wife.
Yeah.
And then when I interact with Rachel, I'm like, oh, that's a woman, and she's like emotionally intelligent. And then I meet her counterpart, and I'm like, oh, y'all go well together. Y'all, and I'm sure they have their problems. I'm sure they deal with their own issues, but it's almost a look, like you could just tell someone has it or not. So you felt you're like, you're about to bark.
Because I can hear the neighbor's dog barking, and it's always a chain reaction with him. It's okay, Bubba. Yeah, I really look at her relationship as something to aspire to, because with them, and I don't know if the cab light theory works either. I just think he met her and was like, yeah, that's a wife. I can't let that go. And they actively choose each other every day, which is the thing that then sustains the marriage, because no matter what, that whatever crazy physical addiction you have to each other, it's gonna waver. And I recently learned that apparently lust is metabolically expensive, which is why it goes away.
Because it taxes your body, it like raises your.
It just takes too much. It takes too much energy. It takes too much of your headspace. Because I think we've all been in that relationship where you just feel like intoxicated by the chemistry of it initially, and no matter how intense that is, it does subside, and then people are left wondering what happened to that. And from there is when you have to then make love an action. Right?
Yes.
It can't just be a noun. It has to be an action. Like, you have to get up and you have to choose to love that person and choose to work through your stuff with them.
It's it's a choice. And I think a lot of people have an expectation that a relationship is supposed to be easy. And it's like, no, it's not. It's supposed to challenge you. It's not supposed to, like, of course, it's not supposed to abuse you in any way, shape, or form, but it's supposed to, like, it's like the gym. It's like, it's going to hurt. Your legs are going to hurt because you're doing some of the lifting. You're going to be challenged in ways where a lot of your habits are broken, and you're forced to kind of rise to the occasion to be the partner, your best self. And I think the goal is to meet each other at the highest point that you can, and then from there go on. And I think that's where, like, I think there's a choice of, like, okay, she's ready. I had one friend say, I was like, how did you know when it was time to get married? Because he was like, I'm not, like, I don't believe in, like, oh, she was the one. He said, when she didn't argue with me for a month straight, and we could just make it a month without arguing, that second month he proposed. And there are little tests that, like, it's not like emotional manipulation, but there are tests, like, you kind of gauge where your partner's at to see, because you want a peaceful life. You want to, like, be able to live in stillness, because, like, what you're saying is, like, when you choose, it's like you're choosing, like cohabitation. You're choosing each other, so you're choosing an environment that is conducive for both of y'all. So if one person's just getting yelled at or bossing the other person around, it's just not going to work. So it's going to have to, there's going to have to be, like, a point where it's like, okay, I know we did this for 30 days. Now we could do it for 2 months. Now we could do it for 3. So I thought that was an interesting, like, thing that he did in order to, like, get to the next level. And he was like, yeah, we just held off until, and he didn't say anything until it was. And I was like, that's interesting. But I've also seen, like, some of my friends that got proposed to, they grew up in a different way. Like, they started to have, like, a different thing about them, and then I could just kind of clock, I'm like, she's about to get proposed to, and then 3 months later,
you called
oh
it.
my gosh. And I'm like, yeah, it's like you assume the form. So yeah, I mean, I think it's yes until it's yes, or yes until it's no. That's how I guess it's a feeling.
I hope that I am at the point with emotional maturity and with figuring out what I want and what that looks like.
Yeah.
That I wouldn't, in a fight to win versus fighting for the relationship, or figure out just finding a person with whom I know I can work things through with.
Yeah.
But the scary thing is, and maybe it just speaks to the types of people getting married who maybe aren't there with emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Divorce rate is still 56% right now.
Yeah.
And there's no other scenario where you're not going to say yes to a surgery with a 56% failure rate, right?
Right.
So it's still this terrifying thing where even though I think I understand all these elements, what if I get into a thing and circumstances change? And what I also like to think on now, and it's so complicated and nuanced, but feminine masculine dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
And where, oh, how great would it be if we could be just in a world where everyone was in whatever part they wanted to be in, and if a woman wanted to just stay home and be a mother and not work, that she could do that. I don't think societally it's safe for a lot of women to say yes to that.
Yeah, to just be the woman that's because it comes with a certain type of traditional man, and that traditional man may have values that aren't safe for the woman. Like it may be like more of a Christian conservative, and you're like, it's not gonna work. Or I mean, and whenever I see guys like paying just to get women's attention, I know that comes with some weird shit. Like they probably have some sexual deviant activities, or they're making the girl do weird shit. And I'm always like hesitant to like endorse that kind of behavior, because that means they couldn't pull from just off of who they were as a person. They needed a thing, and you're taking advantage of a woman who desires safety and like a place to, maybe like a home, or I don't know, like some place of like safety that you're kind of taking advantage of, that she's seeking. So I don't know, that always struck me as weird. Do you think, would you be okay if your partner's not funny as a comic?
I would. Here's where the difference is for me. I need my partner to share my sense of humor above me needing my partner to be funny.
Gotcha. Okay.
I have plenty of funny people in my life.
Yeah.
I don't want to be with someone where they're trying so hard all the time and they're not quite nailing it.
Ooh.
And then even more so, I think my bids for connection are me being funny. And so if I'm with someone that doesn't think I'm funny or doesn't find the same things that let's say I'm trying to share some content with him that is just like cracking me up, and he's not accepting it or receptive to it, that I think is so much more of a deterrent for me versus that I'm not with someone who's the funniest person in the world.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard to like find that as a comic, because we're the athletes of funny, right?
Correct.
So we're around the funniest people in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then to take
and we know the mechanics of it.
And we know the mechanics. We know the science. We know their charts. We know everything. We think funny. Our brains are broken in a way to see the funny in everything. So when you get a guy or a girl and they're trying to be funny, and you're like, it's like
a turnoff.
Yeah, it's a big turnoff. That's a big ick. You can't be funny if you're not funny. There are certain people who were non-comics that I've dated that would genuinely make me laugh, and that was like a huge plus for me.
Yeah, I think anyone that grows up with humor as a defense mechanism, which is probably how I developed it in the first place. It was like my family, they would fight and then they would just break into laughing at something, and that was kind of the thing that would smooth over conflict.
Yeah.
And further, then I moved to America and I go to school and I have a weird rhyming name and I just kind of don't fit in, and we're like lower middle class, so I can't buy the limited 2 clothes and the Birkenstocks, and I'm getting like the Costco version of all the cool shit. So I had a tough time growing up, and humor became a self-defense mechanism in school as well. So that's where mine came from. Where'd yours come from?
Similar. I think being an only child, being weird, moving around, seeing my parents do similar, fight and then laugh and be able to like make fun of each other for the things, because it has nothing to do with what they're fighting about. It's a proxy argument, so it's like it's about something deeper, and they both know it. And to have that, like, to break the fourth wall in the argument, you're like, okay, we're gonna be fine. I heard them laugh. that was always like reassuring to me. So I think I saw that and then focused on how to find the funny through stretching tension, and then moving around, being the weird kid, being mixed and not looking like everyone else, and then having to, I think DC, when I lived in DC, having like Jones sessions, roast sessions where you had to be funny. And it was like, be funny or fight. And I'm like, I'm not going to fight. So I'm going to learn how to be funny. I learned from my friends how to like craft jokes. And then that's where it like blossomed. So yeah, I noticed there's a difference in comedy too. There's people who grew up like that. And then there's theater kids who are more humorist.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh no, I don't like
those
that.
are improv kids.
Yeah, yeah. And
those kids usually go into improv versus stand up.
And it's like, no, we like different funnies. Mm-hmm. Like your funny is not the same. It's not the same language. It's like the difference between Spanish and Portuguese. It's technically the same language, but it sounds, yeah.
No, that's so real. And I said this on a previous episode. I was talking to Nicole Amy Schreiber about sense of humor and dating and kind of what we're sharing there. And that I have jokes that will kind of test a person to see if they have the same sense of humor as me. And if they can't nail that, or if they're not accepting of that, I'm like, this is going to speak to a broader issue.
Yeah. Yeah. There's been like dark moments in life. And then you just see that little thing, and I'm like, you saw that, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, yep, okay. Because it makes you, it just grounds you. It just pulls you from, whatever thing back to earth. And you're just like, yeah, that's the commonality of man, and that's the commonality of, like, what you're trying to connect with people. And I think that's our job, is, like, to go, around the country, and then be like, you saw this, right? This little thing is what I'm going around to tour this little joke that I have, and do you see this thing? And that's when you realize, like, oh, most of us are the same. The country isn't as divided as we think it is. It's where
most people are in the middle.
Yeah, most people are in the middle, and we all see the same thing. We may look at it from different angles, but it's the same thing. So, and I think that's what's happening in Hollywood, is like, it's not us, it's the thing around us that's stretching it and making it seem like it's so divided that we have no choice but to, like, pick a side sometimes. And it's like, really, there's no side. It's just like, we just have to keep pushing out art, making people see that little thing. So, yeah.
Besides someone trying to be funny and flailing, what are your other icks?
Some other icks. I think
something let's say you went on a first date and you immediately knew what happened.
I mean, just trauma dumping immediately. That's an immediate ick. Unawareness is an ick. Water on the sink is an ick.
Water on the sink? Yeah, what do you mean by that?
Like, if a girl comes to my house and there's like water on the sink after she washes her hands, it's an ick. Because I also in my bathroom I have decorative towels, and then I got hand towels. If I see that you use the decorative towel, it's a half a ick. I'll give you a minus a half a ick point.
What are the decorative towels for then? Just
to be there, you know what I mean? It's just to make the bathroom feng shui more. It's like now I got like a wrinkled towel, and then okay, so if you are going to use that towel, leave it to the thing, leave it back to where it was, so it'll dry and like be normal. But if it's like hung and then like weird afterwards, I'll notice that.
Do you have OCD?
A little bit, yeah. I think I'm a lot particular. I think that's why I like producing my shows and producing my shit, because I'm particular, but then I hate producing because I have to be so OCD with everything, and then I never put anything out, and then it's just like, ugh, and then, then I just hate everything more. So Yeah, it's bad, but I'm learning to be a little more like chill. If somebody else is OCD, I'll fuck with their shit. Like I could tell, like if someone has their water bottle straight, I'll turn them and
Evil.
just like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. I know. I'll rub my face on their decorative towels just to let them know, like, nah, I'm fucking with you. But I guess it's to see a reaction. Like, how do you respond to that? Are you gonna get mad? Are you gonna like just fix it?
Yeah. Oh, how do you talk to yourself about it to get past that perfectionism? Do you have like?
I'm
what are you turning
constantly
to?
arguing with people in my head and losing these arguments. But that's why I win arguments, because I've already lost to you 6 times in my head. So by the time we're in the actual argument, I'm gonna walk you down appropriately. But yeah, I'm constantly just like fighting with myself. It's a lot of turmoil. People think I'm like laid back and aloof, but it's like, nah, there's chaos. And I mean,
Oh my God, me too. Is this an only child thing?
it might be, yeah.
Because everyone tells me I seem so chill. And I always think back to this analogy where I'm like a duck on a pond. Like I seem chill on the surface, but
your
underneath
feet
you're like
fighting to stay. Yeah. Nah, that's
it might be the product of being quiet and kind of being,
Yeah.
you know, I'm sure you had some, I wouldn't quite say I had like a latchkey childhood, but I was left to my own devices
Yeah.
without anyone my age around most of the time.
Yeah.
And so it was always just go play by yourself in a corner,
Yeah.
go use your imagination. That was like my only friend for a while. And I do think that kind of makes you an overthinker, but a thoughtful overthinker. Like
Yes.
I need a lot of attention, but I am constantly overthinking the fact
Yeah.
that I need a lot of attention. And I kind of would put that on being an only child.
Yeah. Being an only child, I think that fucked me up the most in Hollywood, because when I know how to be a good only child. Like I know how to break certain rules and bend certain rules to get my way without breaking the system, but also while I know how to like show up to
Yes.
be a good, like, oh, look at this all-star golden star kid. Like
So
he's
real.
so fucking good. He's such a good kid. And I'm like bending like the spoons of the Matrix. But in Hollywood, it didn't work that way. And I'm like, wait, I'm doing the thing. Why am I not getting what I want? And that drove me crazy for a little bit. But then now I'm like, oh no, I could still do it. I just have to, like, there's just a million other people also doing it. So I have to just like wait till the light's on me and then be like, what do you got? Boom. And then take a step forward, go from there. So yeah. What are your weird things as an only child? Do you have like, are you super weird when you're alone?
Maybe. It's hard to I struggle with silence a lot as an
Okay.
adult. I always have to have the TV has to be on, a podcast has to be on, music has to be on, even if I'm not actively paying attention to it. I don't do well in silence anymore. My thoughts are just far too loud. I think maybe that's like a weird thing. I don't know. I would have to have someone else tell me what those are. It's hard to observe them on yourself.
Yeah. But you know deep down you're a weird person.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I got too much validation as a kid. I was the star of the show everywhere I went.
Yeah.
And not only was I an only child, I was an only grandchild to one of my sets of grandparents too, because my mom is an only child as well. So not only was I getting all of that at-home stage time from my parents, I was getting it from my grandparents.
And grandparents
too.
are like, they're going to double down on the
Oh,
goodness.
yeah.
So they're just going to make it look,
And so I don't know where some of my things come from, because I'm like, no, it's not like I wasn't getting validated. It's not like I wasn't getting enough attention.
Yeah.
I was probably getting too much attention. So in a weird way, that backfired and turned me into a comedian.
It's like the spectrum is a circle. It's not like a straight
right.
line. It's like you just end up right where all, like, so you're basically a poor kid who grew up with drug addict parents, because it's a full circle. So it's just like you need that same amount of attention and like things.
Yeah.
Because they would be otherwise on the opposite end of us. But
And I think the universe keeps trying to teach me the same lessons where I grew up with this just expectation that I'm exceptional and things are going to happen to me on an outlier level,
Yeah.
and that I'm not going to have an average path. Like, I'm not average, so I can't have an average timeline to when I'm going to quote unquote make it in comedy. I can't have an average timeline of when I'm going to meet the love of my life and start a family. I just always thought everything had to be exceptional,
Right.
and nothing could be normal. And that is such a tough thing for me to constantly be facing.
Is that why do you feel like your cab light's on? I know it was
Oh,
just
yeah.
geared
It's been
towards
on.
me. Oh, it's
Yeah.
been on? Okay. Because for me, that's a thing too, where I'm like, I know I'm supposed to be up here. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm waiting for me to be up here before I mentally, like, switch that light on. But then I'm like, oh, are you supposed to do it down here? And then you meet the person and then go up together? I don't know. But who knows? Yeah. Being an only child definitely fucked me up for a little bit in comedy. We knew Jack, who was an only child, who was, when I saw him, I was like, oh, you're a better only child. You're better at,
Oh.
you're the top tier. You're like, you're evil and good at the same time, and you know how to like fucking flicker it. And that was the first time I was like, oh, I've been out only child. Because that's been like very rare where I'm like, nah, you can't do what I do. And I'm like, oh, you can charm and manipulate and be evil and good at the same time. And I'm like, oh, okay.
I battle with that a lot. I battle with, where is my intention? Am I doing something shitty? Am I aware that I'm doing something shitty? I'll always ask my therapist if she thinks I'm a narcissist, which if you ask if you're a narcissist, you're not. But I battle with that a lot because I'm
Yeah.
always nervous to be moving through the world in a way where I feel like I'm making moves to be manipulative.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to, but I'm
You're
like, is
you're
that
not.
what I'm doing?
No, we've seen the people come through who have manipulated the system. And I think that's why we're frustrated with comedy, because I'm like, it's like a friend who keeps being in bad relationships. It's like, you're going to keep suffering if you keep taking these types of people, because we've also seen them not pan out a million times, where it's like, you should be looking this way industry. And so it's an energy. Like, you've been in the green room at Westside where everyone's chill, and then someone comes in and you're like, nope, you could just feel it. So it's just like, we have like this sixth sense where we could just read the energy and be like, no, you're manipulating, you're tricking the system. Like, so no, you're not. Otherwise I think people would like box you out. And I think the times we do feel boxed out, it's not that, we're just left alone. And then we're like, wait a minute, why isn't the attention on me? I think that's what's happening.
And it's hard to accept and constantly have to remind myself that when things don't go my way via another person and their decision making, that it's not personal and it's not about me, because all my life everything was personal and about me.
Yeah.
So how do I now as an adult reconcile, oh, this person forgot to respond to my email? It's not because they're going, email from Galina, fuck her, I'm not responding on purpose. It's never that.
Yeah. We sent it at a time where they're like picking up a grocery bag and they're like, oh, she sent, well, okay, I'll get back there. And then we just get forgotten about. And then they're like, oh no, that's happened to me so many times where I'm like, oh, I thought you didn't fuck with me. And it's like, nah, you've always been funny to me. I just like didn't think of you because you're just not in the zeitgeist right now, or you're just not on the top of my mind. Then you realize like how many comics there are, how many people there are. And then like if you book a show, you're like, who the fuck is funny? I don't know who's funny. And then you go down and you're like, oh shit, why didn't I book this person? Why didn't I book this person? And I'm like, yeah, I just happened to see the top 10 people in my post, and I'm like, oh yeah, that person's funny, that person's funny, we should book them. So yeah, the game has definitely shifted. I think it's calmer now. I miss the chaoticness of open mics and the craziness.
I know,
You were
I kinda
there.
do
Yeah,
too. Yeah.
it was crazy back then, and I think that was the end of the era for that type of like environment. But I felt like that's when comedy was the funnest, and I think we should go back to that personally. But now it's like silent. It's like this room, it's just like silent. It's us putting up lights by ourselves, and like, this is comedy. I guess this is what we're supposed to do. And I think it is. I don't know any other answer, but yeah, it's weird now. It's a different.
It does make me grateful for
Yeah.
how it was when we started, and just thinking that that was going to last forever was such I mean, when the pandemic then hit, it
Yeah.
was such a fucking slap in the face.
Yeah, and I think it was like it was an upswing for us, and then pandemic hit, boom, we all had to have a hard reset, and then writer strike, actor strike, fires, boom, boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom, boom. It's like, all right, now I'm starting to feel that it's upswinging again, but then election, tech, like Silicon Valley shift, it's just
Recession
recession.
looming.
Yeah, so we'll see.
Do you have a good relationship with how much news you take in?
Um,
Come here, Monty.
I've been I take in a pretty big dose of news. I try to keep current on what's going on. I try to watch it more objectively and pragmatically rather than like Trump is evil. Like let's look at it like this. I'm looking to see how he's really playing this game.
Yeah,
And
how do you find that? Or
I
how
try
do
to
you do that?
I think he's like a like walk like you have a big stick kind of guy. Like he's like, yeah, give Canada all the tariffs, but I think that's like a negotiation tactic to get everyone to like simmer down and then to come to terms reasonably. So he'll just like he is what our group text was when you were around, where it was like heightened, and then we'll be like, this is it right here. So we get everyone frantic, and then bam. I think that's what he's doing.
Oh,
he's
okay.
he's like crazy, chaotic energy.
I hadn't thought of it that way, and there's something a little comforting about that.
Yeah. And so I'm noticing that it's that. It's like, oh, we're going to do this. It's right here.
Mm-hmm.
And then he'll find like a reasonable spot. But all the news is still up here or
Right.
still here.
It
This
has
is
to
hell.
be to get views.
Yes. If it was moderate, then it would be no one
Everybody would be
watch.
bored.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, but that would be good for art. But I mean, even now it'd be good for art. But I think I think most things happen to be just right in the middle. There are a lot of weird things happening right now that's concerning. So I try to keep up with that to see how it plays out. But I try to stay objective. There will be a time where it's just like, nah, this isn't normal anymore. And I think we're already past that point. It's not. It's
Yeah,
not
it's not
normal.
normal.
It's not normal. But I think maybe because I'm used to chaos that I could try to find the norm. So that's what I'm looking for. That's when I'm watching the news.
Do you get scared when you hear that he's going to try to go out for a third term and just shit on constitutional rules around things like that? How do you deal with things that are that level of chaos? Because I think where I'm struggling is to not let the panic fill me, especially when it's something I can't do anything about. And when I want to be more strategic and reasonable, how you're saying like, oh, everything is really in the middle and this is just a strategy, and I forget what the name of it was, but Steve Bannon had coined it. It's like a specific strategy that he's that chaotic on purpose so that people just trip over their feet trying to keep up while he
Yeah.
does something else in the
Yes.
shadows. I do think that's true.
Steve Bannon was that was a very wild offensive coordinator for Trump. But I remember getting like, because like where I went to college, there's a lot of like political activists. So like Ben Crump, who is like the civil rights attorney for literally every black person who's been killed, or like even the Palisades fire, or Altadena fires, he's like their attorney. He went to my college, and then there's a lot of people who spawn from there, and so from that point, there's a lot of like activism, but alongside that, there's a lot of like socialistic and like sometimes Marxist like literature that gets passed along. And so I remember reading this book by Antonio Gramsci. He was the person who he lived in Italy. He was the person who undermined that government to show people how to like basically overturn an authoritarian government. But I'm reading everything that he's suggesting as like somebody who's trying to flip something, and he's like, you got to do this, and I was like, Trump is doing all of this right now. He's literally like undermining a lot of these things. He's finding these like cultural hegemonist moments where like I'm like, oh, this is where he's jumping through. Like January 6th was a moment that was similar to something that they described in a socialist book, right? And so then I'm like, let me check to see if Steve Bannon fucks with this guy. And Steve Bannon, like, basically, he's one of his influences. And I'm like, oh, so Trump isn't running this fucking authoritarian government. He's running like almost like an activist type, like grassroots type shit. And it's just the people who are grassroots with him are horrible people. Like, they're poor, racist whites, right? But it's still grassroots. And then it started to grow big, and I think that's how he won this time. He was like, yo, let's go to the podcast rather than, let's go to Theo Von rather than bring Glorilla up. So, and I think that is what worked. He's in tune with the culture. He's just a weird person to be in tune with the culture, which is like, that's where it gets like, it just doesn't sit well on my soul. But it's like a white dude being like, yeah, I know all the hit music. And I'm like, where do you know all of this from? I'm going to be like suspicious. And I think that's why we're suspicious of him. We should be, because it sounds like I'm like advocating for him. But like, we should be, and we should be playing defense. But I think it will, because of the defense, it'll land somewhere in the middle.
I hope so.
Yeah. And then hopefully when we get back on offense, we have to go crazy now. We have to go with a crazy
We
left.
have to go Bernie Sanders now. Yeah.
We have to, you have to go Bernie. Even Trump said it. He was like, I should have been facing Bernie right now. Mm-hmm. But then you learn the other side is just as complicit, and then we're just all facing like a globalist, like corporatist type takeover that's happening. I don't think it's Trump. I think it's Silicon Valley. I think it's like big companies that are
they want to
buying
privatize
it.
everything.
Yeah, and it's like, and he's dumb enough to allow that shit to happen
because it's never going to impact him directly, and
right.
I really don't think he cares about anyone
right.
other than himself.
Right.
I think if we're talking about narcissism,
right,
that's textbook.
And then they already bought the government, so I think
right.
Like my parents work in the government, and they're scared, and I'm like, everything that's happening to y'all now, it already happened to Hollywood. We've already been bought out. We've already been sold. We've already been DOGed, where we've been like we skimmed through all of the budgets, and now it's writing rooms went from 20 people to 8. We're thinking like, oh no, it's white men. We've already been through all of this. Now they're just dealing with it. But we've already been DOGed. We've already been that. And this is what it looks like. It looks bleak, but it looks like this. Like, we have to build our own shit.
I never drew that comparison.
Yeah.
You're so right. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Hollywood got doged.
Yeah.
By Netflix, by Hulu, by HBO Max,
but
whatever.
I think it's one more above that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like whoever put the landlines down so Netflix could operate. That's who really, yeah. Because they had to do all the work, and then Netflix just capitalized off of it, because Netflix was this at one point. Like, I'll send you a DVD, and then you send it back. And then they just were like, wait, what if we go here? So the person who's going to get really good at AI from Hollywood is going to be like the person who like cracks the code, or the person who cracks this like the algorithm in a way where it's like, oh, it's just this, just do this. Which comedians, like, now I'm seeing like other people do reels like we do. I think it came from comedy. Mm-hmm. I think it literally came from like Andrew Schultz and all these guys. And then it spills over to everyone else. Now I see politicians with reels. I'm like, okay. So it's like they're only doing what we're doing 5 years ago. So yeah, I think that's what's happening.
But I think in my own journey to try to navigate that shit and to try to use it advantageously for career advances and whatnot, I look at all the influencers whose content is just about content creation. Where it's like, I'm really getting behind the fourth wall with that. And the thing that they're trying to change my mind about, or that I'm at least trying to force myself to change my mind about, is the algorithm. Algorithm just means consumer. At the end of the day, it's not about tricking, and sometimes it is. Some people obviously get lucky and strike gold, and things get seen and things get traction, but they're getting traction because a reel is keeping someone interested. It's providing value in a way, so people are watching it, and that's driving the algorithm. So instead of thinking of the algorithm as this kind of Wizard of Oz behind the curtain mysterious thing, I still have to think of it as the viewer, the one viewer. How do I keep that person engaged enough? How do I sell something to them?
Right.
Which sounds disingenuous, which then makes me think I'm a piece of shit. Back to the only child trauma.
Yeah. It's selling. Yeah, it's selling something. We just have to frame it. How to sell this like joke online, because you can't. The way we sell it on stage is different from how we sell it in the reel.
Yeah.
Because like it's the setup, then the punchline on stage. But when you edit, and that's helped me with writing too. It's like editing, which you'll like as you like dive into like Premiere Pro, you're like, oh, the joke goes this way. Duh, I didn't see it. And then all of a sudden now that joke works because you get to watch yourself the way like audiences do. But like then you frame it differently. And you're like, oh, okay, the hook needs to be up here. It does fuck with people's attention spans, and I'm actually trying to like figure out how to stretch it now. Like let me see if I could put a 10-minute reel out if people will watch it all the way through, and like how do I like make the cuts like Instagram-y. So
it's so weird that we have the dichotomy of that short, and then you have Rogan that's doing 3-hour-long episodes and is the most consumed thing. So like, what the fuck is actually going on with attention spans? Right.
People pay attention to what they want to, and like I don't like that stand-up is like being shortened because it's supposed to be long. It's supposed to be
the hour.
Yeah,
it's supposed to be the hour special.
But at the same time, then there, like, I don't know if this bothers you. There's like young comics who like are dropping hours and they're 3 years in. I'm like, no, you're not supposed.
That was always happening though. That was happening back. We saw as soon as someone can sell tickets and Netflix comes knocking on their door going, do you want an hour? No one's saying no whether they're ready for it or not.
That's
right?
fair. Yeah.
I do think that maybe the ones you're talking about, they're self-producing it for YouTube. Those aren't really, I don't know, they kind of tell on themselves.
Yeah.
You can't be seasoned at 3 years in. Sorry.
Right. It's
you're
like
going to suck.
There's no way you're on
Everyone
your
remembers
second hour.
Brendan Schaub's special coming out and how fucking terrible it was, right? Like everyone sees that for what it is.
Yeah. There's no way like you actually have the depth. And I think that's what like our class will have is depth, because it's
taking us longer on average than it took the class above us.
That class above us had it a lot easier because the industry was like rooted. They didn't have any. There was another drought during that time, right? Because I remember going to the Comedy Store when I first got here. They had 2 mics, Saturday and Sunday. Both of them were empty. I remember seeing like guys like Jeremiah Watkins who were like friends of him. I tell him this story, but I tell this story a lot. But I was like, he was up and then he disappeared for a while. And I was like, where the fuck did Jeremiah go? Remember that one guy, Jeremiah? And then he just emerged and he was like fully formed. And he was like playing instruments. He was like wacky. He was more immersed in his characters. I was like, oh, there he goes. And then
Morgan J. happened to him too.
Morgan J. disappeared. He disappeared during the pandemic, but I remember talking to him during the pandemic. He was like, man, I just got dropped by my manager and blah, 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 blah. And he was like pissed off. He's like, I'm going to do it by myself. And then he like found his little bag, streaming and doing like college shows online, and then flipped it. Just boo. And then you could kind of like, same thing with marriage where you're like, that's a wifey. There's like a glow somebody has where you're like, oh, they're about to take off.
Yeah.
And it's not same material, same everything. It's just like a switch where it's like, oh, you don't care anymore. Like you're something clicked. You got out of this thing. Your light's on. You're about to take off, and then lo and behold, they take off. So I think it's a mental switch for everything.
And I wonder when it comes for people, because I like to think that I had the mental switch of I've just hit a wall. I think for me it was getting serious about this podcast was the thing where I'm just like, you know what? the lifeboat isn't fucking coming.
It
I
ain't.
have to swim to shore. It's not coming to rescue me.
Got
And
it.
as daunting as it seems to have to swim to shore, that's the only way out.
The water's
And that's
cold.
when I got the water's
You have on
freezing.
jeans.
There's piranhas.
Yep. You're like, fuck. It's like
Yeah.
dirty, murky water. You're like, and then shore's way over there. And you're like, I'm gonna have to get in, right?
Because I tried everything, right? Like I wrote pilot after pilot, edited this, did the spec strips, spec scripts, like did the auditions. Like the shit just wasn't hitting, and I was like, why is it not hitting? Oh, because I kind of don't care if it does or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pick something where you care
Right.
and where it doesn't matter if it's, you know, me putting in 20 to 30 hours of
Right.
unpaid work on this at the moment. Subscribe, motherfuckers.
Right.
Where it's like, I just have to find the thing that I can lock in with, that I'm willing to put that much of in, but without it overwhelming me because I care about it enough.
Right. Have you, so recently, I think I reached this point, like maybe within the last 3 weeks, I was just editing. I was like editing, eating healthy, working out, doing stand-up. And it was like me intentionally working for long periods of time. Like I'd edit and then I'd look up and I'm like, damn, it's already 6 o'clock. I gotta go to work out. And then I go work out, come back and be like, I'm just gonna eat something healthy. Then go do stand up. And I'm like, oh, I feel good. And then I started stacking those days. I think I reached like 14 days, right? I'm gonna see if I could do it for a month. Maybe doing it for a month straight, like that guy said about like, oh, that's when I knew she was ready for marriage. It's like, I'm gonna see how long I could do that because that does make a difference. And I'm like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be. This is how I'm supposed to be locking in comedy and by doing my homework and doing all this shit and then just propel it this way with something you like to do. So whether it's this or whether it's like a script.
Is it culture court for you?
It's not culture court. It's one step above it is making like I make rocket ships. Is that still on, by the way?
It is,
okay.
yeah.
So like I want to like show create. Like I want like if I could like get an overall deal where they're like, we're going to give you 5 shows, 2 stand-up specials, and you get to do culture court on site and make another show. I think that's what I'm supposed to do, and then act in one of them, be a judge in another, be a assistant to a therapist in another one. That I think that's where I'm supposed to. That's what I found what I was. Because I used to, like, look at all my friends, like Jack and Garrick, and they would, like, be like, they would work intentionally with scripts. And I was like, oh, I'm supposed to be a writer. Let me write my stuff. And then I would just be like, ugh, I didn't sign up for this. I would have went to fucking law school if I had to write papers.
Right.
You know what I mean? So then I was like, I'm going to learn how to do that because I still have to, like, you know, write scripts and be able to communicate as a writer.
All of us need to know how to do that regardless.
Have our 2 scripts on deck and shit like that. But then I started creating shows, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm the guy in front of the orchestra that does this. This is me. So once I found out I was that in comedy, that was like a relief. Then I could start, like, and then every once in a while I'll jump in the band and play the fucking cello or something like that. So that's what I realized I was. So if I could do that, make a culture court, make a, you know, whatever the thing is.
You're a producer at heart.
Yeah. It's like Kanye minus the anti-Semitism, but it's like yeah, I make things look good, sound good, feel good, and then I'll rap on it. So yeah, that's what I realized I was. So
It's a great breakthrough to have.
yeah, and it's always been there. It's like when everyone else was going this way, I was like in production. I was like, yeah. So let me do this and then make something for me.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'll get to a point where I'm like, oh, I don't want to be in this, but let me just stand behind it. That's the only thing I haven't done, and maybe that's what will crack it. It's like, let me be egoless now and make this thing and then put someone else there and then, you know, see how that takes off. I'm going to be mad because it probably will take off, and I'm like, I was the problem the entire time, and I was just being the only child being like, I have to be the judge. And it's like, really, it was supposed to be so-and-so. Yeah, that might be the next move, just to pull myself completely out and to be like, all right, is it this? But I'll if someone is like better at it than me, I don't have mind like putting myself in like the number 2 position. So like with on site, like I let Sam lead the show, even though I'm like driving the car, if that makes sense. It's like she's pointing us to where we go, and I'm like, okay, I'll be that. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what it really is. But I'm just trying to work intentionally until that time comes. So.
Do you have a meditation practice, or what do you do to try to connect to those parts of you?
For a while I was going to yoga. I was a big yoga head. Now I'm doing Orange Theory. I went from yoga to spin class to Orange Theory. I do meditate.
You're on the basic bitch trajectory.
White. I think that's where white women have it figured out. It's like they know what's up.
Pilates next.
Low key, Pilates might be next. It's just expensive. I gotta find like
you gotta get on ClassPass.
Yeah, but I get like to the point where I want to go every day. But I hear Pilates like will fuck you up.
It will. It's the hardest workout. I've done every workout, and nothing is harder than Legree Pilates specifically, because there's 2 different kinds of Pilates.
Okay.
Legree is one. I might be messing this up, so feel free to correct me, Pilates people.
Okay.
But there's like regular Pilates, which is on a machine that's 2 parts. So one part moves and one part is stationary. And then Legree Pilates is a 3-part reformer. So there's 2 moving, or the 2 ends of it are stationary and the middle part moves. And that one is so hard.
Yeah.
And people shake like a leaf when they go in there, but it is the most intense. It hits these muscle groups that are so deep within you that nothing else kind of hits. No amount of weightlifting or anything else is going to do it. I think because you have a yoga background, you're probably going to be in a better position to try it out, but
maybe.
I think you would love it.
Yeah. You know what? That might be the next move, because I did just freeze Orange Theory, and I was like, I'm kind of bored with it. I think I maxed out what I can do in the class.
I like that in Orange Theory, though, that you get to compete with people in the class.
Yeah. That's what I like doing. I think that's, like, spin class brought that out of me where I'm like, oh, no, I'm like, I remember me and Dan Donahue were talking about this, and then, like, I was like, bro, I cannot get, I started off, like, 20th, and then I got to 10, and then I got top 5. And I was like, bro, I cannot break 3. And he's like, nah, you gotta lock in, man. Like, you gotta like do this. And then he came to a class with me, and him being there, this was, and you know, Dan's athletic, but like we were 1 and 2 at the end of class, but this was my first time I got number 1, and he was like watching me like go through it.
Amazing. I bet he gave it to you. I bet he could have probably inched ahead.
I think so. He might have. That would have been crazy if
That's a good friend.
At the very end, he like let off just like a little bit to let me have it, but like it was beautiful beating all those 38 white women. Just like we really worked our ass off to do that, and it ended up us being 1 and 2. But then I learned how to be number 1. I was like, oh, okay, you got to do this and this and this. And, like, I think that's what it is. It's like we got to learn how to, you know, be number 1 on a level in comedy of, like, it takes that you can't just show up to spin class and then pedal and think you're going to get it. You have to, like, warm up. You got to start early, and you got to end all the way through, and blah, 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 everything in between. So, yeah, I'm looking. I might fuck with Pilates low key. Yeah.
I want you to report back.
Yeah, and then I'm thinking about like, I'm sure your back is like this too. Like women's back, y'all have this like these like flank muscles, and your spine.
It's fair, we do.
It goes in. There's like a little dip where your spine goes, and that's like pure muscle. So y'all will be like small. You'll weigh like 115, but you'll be like built like a dolphin. Like. It's just pure muscle, no fat. And then like you're like, and that's what I'm seeing in class too. I'm like if I were to like do the proportional math of like a woman doing like 20-pound weights while I'm doing like 45s, I'm like, no, I weigh twice as much than her, but she's lifting more than me proportionally. And then she could run her ass off. I'm like, you're low key, you're technically stronger than me. Even though it just looks like I'm doing more weight. So I'm like, I see you, little 5'3" little lady, and like those are the women who I'm trying to beat because I could beat the white dudes in class. It's like they're either like an exceptional jogger or they're strong. They're not both.
Right.
So like the guys who could run 6 miles, they're weak, but the guys who could lift, they're big, but they can't run. So, but the little white women,
They got it.
cooking on both.
Incredible.
I knew the woman who was beating me in spin class. I would
Yeah.
look at her. I'm like, and it was just like this little white lady just going hard, and it's so even in yoga, like the girl who was just like, who could do the crow pose or who could do a headstand, just strong. They had those little back muscles. That's how you could tell someone's strong. Those little fucking back muscles. Yeah.
That's a good place to end it. Keith Johnson, what do you have going on?
Culture Court at Culture Court Comedy. I'm dropping full episodes of cases. At On-Site Comedy, I'm dropping full therapy sessions of comics. Me and Sam pretend to be therapists, and then we diagnose comics and tell them what's wrong with them and why they're broken. And then on Culture Court, I'm a judge, and we just have like comics be lawyers, and then they litigate and argue, and then the audience is the jury. So you can follow those two. Those are my shows. And then stand up, I'm dropping at Keith Johnson HQ. So
Amazing. Thanks for
hell
coming
yeah.
on today.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Bye.